and call it familiar. We see the calm shimmer of its surface, the rolling rhythm of its tides, the infinite blue that stretches beyond the horizon. But for all our confidence, for all our maps and measurements, the truth is humbling. We've explored more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own oceans. And that simple fact invites a haunting question. What if, beneath that shifting blue expanse, there lies an entire chapter of history we've missed? What if, long before the first city rose from stone, before humans learned to write their stories on clay tablets or carve their triumphs in rock, there was already a civilization beneath the sea? Not myth, not metaphor, but something real, ancient, and utterly forgotten. Feels like the end of the world, not its beginning. We think of it as a boundary, a place where things are swallowed and never seen again. Yet, if history has taught us anything, it's that what we assume to be impossible often turns out to be merely unseen. For thousands of years, coastlines have been the heart of human life. Our earliest settlements grew along rivers, bays, and estuaries. Water brought food, connection, and trade. It also brought risk, storms, floods, rising seas. If the same was true for people tens of thousands of years ago, then when the last ice age ended and the oceans rose by more than 100 meters, their world, their homes, temples, maybe even their entire civilization would have vanished beneath the waves. And so the question takes shape like a shadow forming in deep water. Did we miss an entire civilization beneath the ocean? We have to shift our sense of time. The ocean moves on a scale that dwarfs our lifetimes. It rises and falls not over centuries, but over epochs. It erodes mountains, buries valleys, and reshapes continents. Every tide is a sculptor, every current a silent historian erasing yesterday's coastline to carve tomorrow's. Entire countries can disappear. In a million, the planet's face can change beyond recognition. We live on a world that forgets itself. And the ocean is its most ruthless editor. Out over the waves, you're gazing at land that once may have been dry. Of salt water lie plains, rivers, and forests that existed only 12,000 years ago. These were once the coastlines of the last ice age world, a planet where sea levels were so low that vast stretches of what we now call seabed were exposed land. Lived and then drowned forever beneath the melt of a warming world. Existed there. If they built their world on those ancient coasts, then most of what they left behind is gone. sealed beneath layers of silt and silence. We might be standing above it right now, with no idea that the story of humanity extends thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years deeper than we think. The idea feels outlandish, yet it has its roots in quiet facts. When scientists map the ocean floor, they often find shapes that seem too deliberate, too geometric. Long ridges that resemble walls, rectangular mounds rising from flat seabeds. Patterns that at first glance seem to hint at human design, and yet, each time the official explanation returns to geology, faults, lava flows, natural formations. And maybe they are, but maybe not all of them. In the depths, the difference between natural and artificial can blur. The ocean distorts everything it keeps. A mountain becomes a ruin becomes a reef. Coral grows over the bones of stone, and within a few centuries, even the most deliberate architecture becomes part of the sea floor. If there was ever a civilization beneath the ocean, it wouldn't look like one anymore. It would look like the planet itself. From the Deep has fascinated scientists, historians, and dreamers alike. The lost city of Atlantis is the most famous echo of that idea, but it's not alone. Across the world, in the myths of islanders, fishermen, and ancient storytellers, there are tales of lands that once existed where only ocean remains now. Stories of shining cities swallowed overnight, of the sea reclaiming its own. To the modern mind, these are just stories, but stories often hold the memory of truth, blurred by time. If an entire civilization did rise and fall beneath the sea, we might not need to discover it. We might already remember it, buried not in the seabed, but in our oldest myths. Yet, this story isn't about Atlantis or legend. It's about evidence, or rather, the silence where evidence should be. Because the more we study Earth's geological past, the more we realize how fragile physical proof really is. Everything we build, everything we are, sits on a planet that is constantly reshaping itself. The seafloor spreads, continents drift, mountains crumble and rise again. Over tens of thousands of years, oceans erase everything. And see the planet's hidden surface, it would tell you a quiet story of creation and destruction. There are scars there, long, ancient canyons carved by rivers that no longer exist. Their beds now home to deep-sea creatures. There are terraces there where waves once broke on a forgotten shore. There are plateaus and ridges that match the shape of continental shelves, outlines of entire continents that the ocean has swallowed. These are not places we can walk anymore, but they were once. And the question that refuses to fade is, who walked there? To understand that, we have to go back to the end of the Ice Age, roughly 12,000 years ago. The Earth was warming. Glaciers that had covered vast portions of the planet began to melt. Sea levels rose rapidly, not slowly, but in dramatic surges that could swallow entire regions within a few human lifetimes. Coastal plains turned to marshes, marshes to bays, and then to open sea. A village by the shore might have become a memory within a generation. If entire cultures existed in those regions, coastal cultures that depended on the fertile lands of the shore, their remains would now rest under layers of sand, clay, and salt water. Off the coast of India, near the Gulf of Kambat, sonar scans have revealed what appears to be a vast, grid-like structure beneath 40 meters of water. Researchers have suggested it might be natural. Others think it could be the remnants of a city thousands of years older than any we found on land. Massive stone terraces descend into the sea, shaped with an uncanny precision. To others, it's a trick of geology. Just possibility, lying quiet beneath the waves. It hides both truth and illusion equally well. Beneath the sea eventually hits the same wall. Proof. And under the ocean, almost nothing does. Erodes. Stone erodes. In a few millennia, the ocean can erase a city completely. In 10,000 years, even the foundations vanish beneath layers of silt thicker than mountains. If a civilization existed there 50,000 years ago, we wouldn't expect to find walls or statues. We might only find traces in the chemistry of the soil, hints of tools, metalwork, or fire buried beneath sediment thicker than mountains. Of absence. Sometimes it's only evidence of how little we've looked. Less than 20% of the ocean floor has been mapped in high detail. That means more than 80% of our planet's largest surface remains unexplored, unseen, untouched. In that vastness, what secrets could still lie hidden? A single site buried in silt could rewrite everything we know about human history. And yet, until we look, truly look, the question will remain unanswered. There's something haunting about that the story of humanity could be missing an entire volume, not lost in the stars or buried in the desert, but drowned beneath the very thing that gave us life. The ocean has always been both cradle and crypt. It nurtured the first forms of life, then, over eons, consumed them. Every creature, every shipwreck, every civilization that touches its edges eventually returns to it. To the ocean, time is irrelevant. Everything is temporary, even us. is never silent. It hums with the weight of memory, the movement of unseen currents, the whispers of whales echoing through the deep, the pulse of tides that have moved the same way for hundreds of millions of years. It is both the oldest and most mysterious part of Earth. And in that rhythm, in that endless motion, it's easy to imagine that it knows something we don't. That beneath its surface, beyond the reach of light, there are stories we've forgotten. Not because they were small, but because they were vast. Perhaps they were the first to master the tides, to use the ocean not as a boundary, but as a highway. Perhaps they built floating structures, ports, or even entire cities designed to rise and fall with the sea. Perhaps they understood the planet's cycles better than we do. And when the ice began to melt, they watched the world they built slowly drown, leaving behind no monuments, only the faint echo of their existence in legend. And maybe, just maybe, those legends were warnings, passed down, distorted, but never entirely lost, because the sea remembers, even when we do not. What lies beneath, the ocean offers no answers, only silence. The kind that feels ancient and infinite. Yet, in that silence, there is an invitation to wonder, to search, to remember that we are not the first to dream, nor the first to lose what we've built to the tide. If we ever hope to find what's truly hidden below, we'll need to look deeper, not just into the sea, but into the assumptions that shape our sense of history. The world beneath the waves isn't just unexplored territory, it's unexplored time. And as the light fades, as the surface disappears above, the question echoes softly through the dark. What if we missed an entire civilization beneath the ocean? And what if it's been waiting for us to notice? Picture it as still, a blue sphere floating through space, calm, unchanging, eternal. But the truth is far stranger and far less stable. Our planet is alive. It breathes. It moves. It forgets. The ground we walk on, the continents we call permanent, are not fixed. They drift slowly on molten rock, rising and falling like the chest of a sleeping giant. The mountains we think of as ancient are brief, flickers in deep time. Oceans are born, grow, and die. Entire worlds appear, then vanish again beneath the tide of eons. It's easy to forget that what we see around us is only a snapshot, a single frame in an endless film that's been playing for billions of years. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface, the earlier frames are still there, faded, torn, overwritten, but not gone. If we could peel back the layers of the earth like pages in a book, we'd find the story of civilizations that were never ours. Not human, perhaps not even biological in the way we understand, but still the marks of existence: pressure, heat, motion, memory, all written into the stone. The continents have been drifting across the planet like slow-moving ships. The Atlantic Ocean, vast and ancient, was once nothing but a crack in a single, unified landmass. Over time, the crust split apart and the sea poured in. What was once land became ocean. What was once ocean became land. The process never stopped. That's the secret of Earth's past. It's not buried, it's moving. Every year, the continents shift a few centimeters. It sounds trivial, but over tens of millions of years, it's enough to erase the very shape of the planet. If you could stand still for that long, you'd watch coastlines dissolve, mountain ranges rise and crumble, islands appear and disappear like ghosts. In 100,000 years, a city can vanish without a trace. In 1 million, even the continent that held it might be unrecognizable. So when we wonder whether an entire civilization could have existed beneath the ocean, we're not asking a question of fantasy. We're asking whether we've understood the pace at which the earth forgets. Because the ocean does not merely cover the past, it consumes it. Is a landscape in motion. Volcanic ridges push new rock upward, while older crust sinks into trenches thousands of meters deep. Sediment flows like rivers, carried by undersea currents. Mountains rise from fissures in the crust, then collapse back into molten shadow. Imagine a city built by the shore 50,000 years ago, a complex network of homes, roads, art, a civilization that knew the sea not as danger, but as companion. For a time, they would thrive. Then, as the world warmed and glaciers melted, the water would creep higher each year. The city's walls would become docks. The docks would become reefs. The tides would swallow everything. In 1,000 years, the rooftops would vanish beneath the surface. In 10,000, coral would grow over the ruins. In 100,000, the ocean floor itself would shift, dragging what was once the city into the deep. And in 1 million, all that remained would be silt, a whisper of what once was. That's how the planet resets itself quietly, without malice. The Earth isn't trying to hide the past. It's simply making room for the future. But that process, slow, patient, absolute, means that what we think of as the ancient world may be just the shallowest layer. If history is a book, then we're reading only the last few pages, the parts that happen to survive the tide. Everything before that, the older stories, the forgotten civilizations, may be buried deep under the seafloor, sealed in darkness and pressure, far beyond our reach. But the Earth knows better. Time to the planet is a spiral, layers upon layers folding back on themselves. Each one builds upon the remains of the last. Every rock, every grain of sand beneath the ocean floor is a fragment of something that came before. A volcano erupts, pouring ash into the sea. Centuries later, the ash hardens into rock. Millennia after that, the rock is buried beneath another layer: mud, coral, silt, until it becomes the foundation for something new. In this way, Earth's memory is rewritten over and over, and yet faint traces of the past remain. Scientists call this the geological record, the story of the planet told through stone. But like any story, it has missing pages. Most of what has ever happened on Earth is lost to erosion, subduction, or decay. For every fossil we found, there are millions that have been crushed into dust. For every site we've excavated, there are countless more that the Earth has reclaimed. If a civilization rose 100,000 years ago, its story would be buried not in ruins, but in chemistry. Trace minerals in rock, unusual isotopes in sediment, perhaps even a layer of microplastics or compounds unknown to nature. If such a civilization existed, its mark would be subtle, a whisper in the strata, a thin line of change among billions of years of geological rhythm. And maybe, just maybe, that line is already there. Toward strange spikes in carbon, odd deposits of metals, or signs of sudden environmental shifts that don't fit the natural cycle. We explain them as volcanic or as meteor strikes because that's what fits the model we know. But what if we're wrong? What if one of those ancient scars wasn't caused by fire or stone, but by something intelligent, an event, an industry, a civilization long erased? It's a question that both tempts and terrifies scientists, because to prove it true would mean rewriting not just history, but prehistory itself. Think about it. If intelligent life had already risen once before us, long before our ancestors built their first cities, then civilization isn't a one-time miracle. It's a pattern, one that might repeat whenever conditions allow. That would make us not the first, but perhaps the latest in a series of intelligent worlds Earth has hosted and forgotten. And that realization changes everything. It makes the ocean not a void, but a mirror, one that reflects not just what we are, but what we might have been. When we look at the Earth from space, it's striking how little of it is actually land. More than 70% of our world is ocean. The continents, vast as they feel to us, are just islands in a planetary sea. And in that sea, the planet hides its deepest secrets. 12,000 feet. The deepest trenches reach more than 36,000, deep enough to hold Mount Everest and still have room above. In those depths, sunlight never reaches. Pressure is crushing. The temperature hovers just above freezing. And yet, life thrives there. Not just microbes, but creatures that glow, hunt, and move in ways that seem almost alien. If life can adapt to that, why not civilization? It doesn't have to mean cities like ours. An oceanic civilization might have looked nothing like the world we know. Perhaps it was built around coral structures, kelp towers, or networks of floating platforms that left no stone behind. Perhaps it existed in shallow coastal regions where rivers met the sea and tides dictated the rhythm of life. When the seas rose, those regions disappeared, taking everything with them. To us, the idea of a society erased by rising water sounds apocalyptic. But to the Earth, it's routine. The planet has flooded itself many times. Ice ages come and go. Sea levels rise and fall by hundreds of meters. Continents split apart and merge again. Every few tens of thousands of years, the shape of the world is different. In that endless cycle, civilizations, if they existed, would have been brief flashes of order in a sea of chaos. They might have thrived for 10,000 years, then vanished in one storm, one earthquake, one slow drowning of their homeland. And then the ocean would begin its patient work, grinding their monuments into sand and scattering their cities into coral until nothing remained but myth. That work, every tide, every current, is an act of quiet transformation. The continents we live on today are already changing beneath us. In some places, the land is rising. In others, it's sinking. The coastlines we know today will not last forever. Someday, our own cities might be the next Atlantis, our skylines reduced to reefs, our monuments buried beneath silt. And when that happens, if the earth endures long enough, the story of our civilization will be rewritten the same way. A few traces in the stone, a few anomalies in the chemistry, a question whispered by some future mind. Did we miss them? Were they here before us? It's humbling, isn't it? To realize that the earth doesn't keep our records. We have to write them ourselves. And even then, they fade. Every structure we build, every story we tell, is temporary. The planet moves too slowly for us to notice, but too quickly for anything to last. If we were to vanish tomorrow, our cities would crumble within centuries. Forests would grow through the streets. Oceans would rise again. Within 10,000 years, even the strongest towers would be gone. Within 100,000, there would be no sign that we were ever here. And that's why it's not impossible, perhaps not even improbable, that another civilization once walked this same world, built their dreams by the shore, and vanished without a trace. The earth has no memory for permanence, but it does have a rhythm, the endless rhythm of creation and loss. That shifting mirror, that ancient eraser. If the land is the present, then the sea is the archive, the deep, silent vault where the oldest stories sleep. We've barely opened it. We've barely begun to listen. The continents drift, the currents move, the tides rise, and somewhere, beneath 1,000 meters of darkness, the traces of another time may still wait, not to be discovered, but to be remembered. Because nothing on this planet is ever truly gone. It only changes form, waiting for someone to recognize it again. And maybe, one day when our machines finally map the last of the seafloor, we'll find something that shouldn't be there. A pattern too deliberate, a structure too perfect. And in that moment, the silence of the ocean will break, not with sound, but with realization that the shifting earth didn't just bury the past, it hid it. On purpose or by accident, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. A history rewritten by water, pressure, and time. And as we float above it, we have to ask ourselves, if the planet has forgotten so much already, what else has it chosen not to remember? Not because the continents were different, not because the sky was closer, but because the ocean was smaller. The water that now laps against every shore, that fills every gulf and trench, was once locked away, frozen in vast sheets that covered half the northern hemisphere. The world then was colder, sharper, quieter. The air carried the bite of snow, even in summer, and the horizon was distant, a faint blue line beyond fields and forests that no longer exist. In that world, the sea was far away. Imagine it, a coastline that stretches hundreds of miles beyond today's beaches. Wide plains where fishermen now cast their nets, forests where whales now drift. It's almost unthinkable, and yet it was real. Our planet as it was only 12 or 15,000 years ago. Back then, the sea level stood more than 100 meters lower than it does now. The world map, if you could see it, would look familiar and alien all at once. Europe and Britain were one continuous landmass, connected by a vast expanse of valleys and rivers known today as Doggerland. Australia and New Guinea formed a single continent. Across Southeast Asia, a land called Sundaland bridged the islands we now know as Borneo, Java, and Sumatra. The Persian Gulf was not a sea, but a fertile plain, fed by the great rivers Tigris and Euphrates. They were homes. Forests teemed with life, and the people of that time, hunter-gatherers, early builders, wanderers, lived along those fertile coasts. Their camps sat by rivers that no longer flow. Their firelight flickered against cliffs that now lie beneath 100 feet of water. We often think of prehistory as a time before civilization, before cities, before writing, before the idea of permanence. But maybe that's only because the record we have is incomplete. Maybe it's because the rest of the story lies underwater. When the earth began to warm, the change was slow enough to be invisible and fast enough to be devastating. The great ice sheets of the north began to melt, their weights released, their frozen hearts breaking apart into rivers that flowed toward the sea. Every drop, every melt added to the oceans, and the oceans rose. Year, then meters, then sudden surges, meltwater pulses when vast glaciers collapsed, sending waves that reshaped the world overnight. The people living then would have watched the sea creep closer each season, taking the land one breath at a time. Their memories would have stretched back only a few generations, and in those memories, the world would have seemed to shrink. Each generation would tell stories of villages that once stood farther out, of forests that sunk beneath the waves, of gods and spirits that swallowed the earth. And in those stories, myth was born. Because when the world drowns slowly, it feels like eternity. When the horizon moves year by year, it becomes something sacred. And when the last dry hill becomes an island, that island becomes holy, the final refuge of a vanishing world. That is the essence of every flood myth humanity has ever told. See in a single night, the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the gods drowned the world for its arrogance. The story of Manu in India, who built a great boat and carried life through the flood. The tales of Nu'u in Hawaii, of Deucalion in Greece, of the deluge in the Quran and the Bible. Different names, same memory. The world drowned once, and we survived. But what if those weren't just myths? What if they were echoes? The distant memory of real floods that swept away entire coastlines, villages, perhaps even cities. When we map the ocean floor today, we can see the shapes of those old lands. The ghosts of rivers winding through the North Sea. The valleys of the Sunda Shelf, their paths still carved into the rock. The drowned mountain ridges of the Caribbean and Mediterranean. Each one a remnant of a time when the world's edge lay farther out. Beneath those waters, the land remains, fossilized, untouched. Sediment settles gently over what was once soil. Currents swept softly over what was once air. It's a silent world, but not a dead one. To uncover fragments of that world. In the North Sea, ancient peat beds rise from the seafloor, once forests, now preserved by cold and darkness. Divers have found tools, flint blades, the bones of animals that grazed where ships now pass. Off the coast of India, sonar has revealed patterns of stone beneath the silt, too regular to be natural, too deep to be recent. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument descends into the sea in precise geometric steps as though shaped by hands. And across the Mediterranean, submerged ruins whisper of harbors and temples older than memory. These finds are debated fiercely. Some claim they are mere formations carved by currents and time. Others see them as proof that the sea hides more than we dare admit. The truth lies somewhere between science and story, and the water guards it well. What we do know is this. Around 12,000 years ago, as the world warmed and the seas rose, humanity changed. We had lived as nomads, small groups following the seasons, moving with the herds. But then, just as the oceans settled into their modern shape, civilization began. We learned to farm. We built cities. We built monuments that reached toward the sky instead of vanishing beneath the tide. And we began to record our world in stone and clay, a way of defying the ocean's amnesia. It's an uncanny coincidence, isn't it, that our written history begins right after the seas stopped rising, that the first temples, the first walled cities, the first gods appear when the earth finally found balance again? Almost as if we were rebuilding, as if the survivors of that drowned world carried fragments of memory into a new age. Maybe the flood myths aren't just warnings. Maybe they are the record of that transition, the moment humanity began again. Members in silence. It does not keep monuments, it keeps layers. Every century, a new sheet of sediment settles upon the old. Every millennium, the crust shifts, folds, buries. And everything that lived becomes part of the cycle. If we could see those layers all at once, Slice through the crust like pages in a book. We would see the same story repeated over and over. Creation, growth, collapse, silence. Land, water, land again. Civilization rising, vanishing, remembered only by what it leaves behind. It's easy to believe we are unique, that our time is different, our world permanent. But the earth does not recognize permanence, only change. And if it has drowned worlds before, it will drown them again. The drowned world, then, is not a tragedy. It is a reminder that everything we know is temporary, that the sea does not destroy, it renews, it covers, cleanses, and begins again. Coast, perhaps near what is now the English Channel or the Gulf of Thailand. The air is heavy with mist, the tide whispering at your feet. Behind you, forests hum with life. Ahead, the horizon glimmers, endless and blue. Beneath that blue lies the memory of another world, one that once looked exactly like this. You can almost see it if you close your eyes. A valley stretching toward the horizon, a river cutting through it, its water cold and clear. On its banks, people building, laughing, living, unaware that their time is nearly done. And then, slowly, the tide rises. The water creeps in, not as a wave, but as a whisper. Generation by generation, the sea takes what it lent. And one day, that valley is gone. The river becomes a current beneath the waves. The air becomes water, and the water becomes silence. But the world doesn't end. It simply changes shape. Stones, stories, songs, they would lie now beneath coral and silt. Perhaps someday, a diver's light will sweep across the seabed and catch on something that shouldn't be there. A wall, a carving, a pattern in the sand too deliberate to ignore. And in that moment, the drowned world will speak again, softly, through the language of stone. Until then, it waits, it dreams, and maybe in its dreams, it remembers us, because we too are children of the flood. Every one of us carries that memory in our blood, the genetic echo of those who fled the rising sea, who learned to survive when the land vanished. The ocean shaped not just our history, but our very being. We are drawn to it, mesmerized by it, fearful of it, reverent of it, because somewhere deep within, we remember that it once took everything. The drowned world is not just in the past, it is beneath us, around us, within us. Every wave that breaks against the shore is a reminder that the boundary between land and sea is temporary, that the ocean always wins, but never cruelly. It simply returns to claim what time has borrowed. In our age, melting ice, swelling seas, perhaps we are living through the beginning of another chapter. One day, our cities will be coasts, our monuments will be wreaths, and our stories will drift into legend. But maybe that's how it has always been. Maybe the earth keeps balance not by holding on, but by letting go. And if that is true, then the drowned world was never lost. It is part of the rhythm, a pulse in the heartbeat of time. The countries rise and fall, the seas advance and retreat. And through it all, life persists, learning, forgetting, dreaming. We call it the drowned world, but perhaps it was the world that lived twice, once in sunlight and once in shadow. And as we float above it now, on the surface of the same endless sea, we are the next verse in the same ancient song. A melody carried through water, across time, from one world to the next. Is never truly silent. To the human ear above the surface, it may seem peaceful. The soft hiss of waves, the rhythmic pull and release of the tide. But beneath that calm, beneath the mirror of blue, the water is alive with sound. It hums, it groans, it speaks in frequencies too low for us to hear. The creaking of tectonic plates, the heartbeat of currents swirling in the dark, the song of whales carrying across entire oceans. And sometimes, amid that endless choir, a single tone rises, strange, unidentifiable, powerful enough to make the planet itself vibrate. It's a language we don't yet understand, a whisper from the deep. In the summer of 1997, scientists from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration recorded something unlike anything they had ever heard before. It came from somewhere near the southern Pacific, far from any ship or volcanic ridge. It was so loud that sensors thousands of miles apart detected it. A deep, rolling sound that rose in pitch, then faded into nothing. It sounds almost comical, but what they heard was anything but. For a while, no one could explain it. The sound was organic, too irregular to be mechanical, too powerful to belong to any known creature. It echoed across the ocean floor like the call of something enormous, something alive. Speculation rippled across the scientific world. Some said it was the shifting of undersea ice. Others whispered it might be a geological event, or even the collapse of a massive cavern. And then there were those who wondered, half in jest, half in hope, that it might be a voice from something we had yet to meet. Years later, researchers concluded that the bloop likely came from ice fracturing in Antarctica, the sound of glaciers calving into the sea. But still, the mystery clings to it, because even if the explanation is simple, the feeling it stirs is not. on a planet still wild and unknowable, that there are frequencies older than language, older than thought, older than us, resonating in the bones of the earth. Every creak of the deep, every whisper through the abyss feels like a message we were not meant to understand. Beneath the waves, there is constant communication. The sea is full of voices, from the clicks of dolphins to the thunderous moans of blue whales. Whale song can travel thousands of miles, a low-frequency hymn carried by water's density. But there are other sounds, too, less familiar, less explainable. Scientists have recorded what they call the upsweep, a recurring pattern of long, narrow pulses echoing from somewhere in the Pacific. It has been heard for decades, always the same frequency, always the same mysterious regularity. There is also Julia, a deep, drawn-out sound recorded in 1999, so strong that it echoed across the entire ocean. And the slowdown, a noise that lasted over 7 minutes, descending steadily in pitch, as if something massive were sinking into stillness. Some might be ice. Some might be the movement of magma under the crust. Some might be something else. To the oceanographer, they are data points. To the dreamer, they are voices. Because every unknown sound carries a question. Who or what is speaking? The mysteries of sound are only half the story. Beneath the calm of the sea lie shapes, lines, edges, patterns that should not exist. Off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, divers discovered what seemed to be a staircase descending into the deep. At first glance, it looked natural. Terraces of sandstone shaped by time. But the more they explored, the more deliberate it seemed. 70 meters long, 10 meters high, with flat surfaces and sharp right angles. There were steps, pathways, and what looked like platforms. Some divers claimed to see carvings, faint symbols eroded by time. Was it the work of an ancient civilization built before the seas rose? Or just the patient hand of erosion, carving the illusion of purpose into stone? The debate continues, but the image endures. A pyramid sleeping under the waves, the light of a diver's torch flickering over its edges like the memory of a sun that no longer shines there. Thousands of miles away, another riddle lies hidden, the Bimini Road, off the coast of the Bahamas. A line of massive rectangular stones arranged like a causeway, curving into the blue. Some believe it is part of the lost city of Atlantis. Others say it's simply fractured limestone, cracked naturally over time. But when you see it, those vast, even blocks spaced in eerie precision. You feel the same quiet shiver, because even if it's natural, it feels intentional. It feels remembered. Or pattern sees architecture where perhaps there is only coincidence. And yet, sometimes coincidence speaks the truth, that we long for meaning in the unknown, that when faced with mystery, our instinct is to imagine a story. There are hundreds of places like these scattered across the world. In the Mediterranean, near Malta, submerged temples align perfectly with those still standing on land. In the Black Sea, sonar scans reveal the ghosts of cities, rows of rectangles buried beneath layers of silt. Off the coast of India, near Dwarka, divers have uncovered walls and pillars beneath 30 meters of water, carbon dated to nearly 9,000 years ago. Each discovery reignites the question, how much of our history is missing? If civilizations rose before ours, then the ocean is their tomb. But it's a strange kind of tomb, one that preserves as much as it erases. Where fire consumes, water remembers. Lie untouched for tens of thousands of years, sealed in cold and pressure. Every fragment, every shard is a whisper from the deep, not loud, not clear, but insistent. The ocean never shouts its secrets, it murmurs them, softly, waiting for us to listen. To explore the deep sea is to venture into another world. Light disappears within a few hundred meters, swallowed by the water. Color drains away until everything turns blue, then black. The temperature drops, the air compresses, and every sound becomes immense. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the pressure is more than 8 tons per square inch. Metal warps. Glass collapses. Only silence endures. And yet, even there, life persists. Strange, delicate, glowing. Creatures that drift like lanterns in a place with no horizon. Organisms that feed on heat from the Earth's core, thriving without sunlight. Cold to darkness to crushing weight. What else might endure there? Not just life as we know it, but memory. The imprint of civilizations long gone, pressed into the seafloor like fossils of thought. Perhaps in some distant layer of sediment, there are traces of chemical reactions we didn't create. Patterns that mark a vanished intelligence, erased not by failure, but by time. If the ocean holds these ghosts, it holds them kindly. It wraps them in silence and depth, hiding them from destruction, waiting for curiosity to find them again. Every ancient culture spoke of places swallowed by the sea. Atlantis in the west, Lemuria in the east, Kumari Kandam in the south, all different names for the same longing, the memory of something lost just beyond reach. Utopia undone by pride. Tamil legends speak of lands beneath the Indian Ocean where poets once sang before the waves took them. In the Pacific, islanders tell of ancestors who fled sinking homelands to find the archipelagos they now inhabit. To some, these are just stories. To others, they are data points, oral records passed down through generations, describing real events in mythic language. The ocean, in its endless patience, blurs the line between the two. It is both myth and map, both memory and oblivion, both the end and the beginning. When scientists listen to the ocean, they often hear the same thing: noise. An endless wash of static, like wind through leaves. But sometimes, hidden within that static, patterns emerge. Frequencies that repeat, rhythms that seem deliberate. As interference. Or perhaps they are something more. The ocean replaying its old songs, the echoes of past events still vibrating in the deep. Water, after all, is a perfect medium for memory. It records vibration, carries sound, preserves traces. In every drop of the sea, there are molecules older than the continents themselves. To listen to the ocean is to listen to time. And perhaps that's why it unnerves us, because it knows everything we've forgotten. Divers often speak of a feeling they can't explain, a kind of peace that borders on awe. When you're deep enough, far from the light, sound becomes slow, and thought begins to drift. You lose your sense of direction. The surface could be anywhere. It's as if the sea is holding you, rocking you gently, reminding you that you are small and temporary. Still, into the pitch-dark trenches where even sound becomes thick. You drift past pillars of rock and vents glowing faintly like embers. The current brushes your faceplate like a sigh, and then, just for a moment, you see it. A line in the rock, too straight, too perfect. A pattern repeating in symmetry. A shape that whispers, someone was here before. You reach out your hand, the light trembling, and the current stirs the silt. In seconds, it's gone. Only darkness remains. But the feeling doesn't fade, because somewhere in that vast, silent space, something unseen is still speaking. We are land creatures, but our origins are aquatic. Our bodies carry the memory of the sea, the salt in our blood, the rhythm of our hearts echoing the pulse of waves. Perhaps that's why the ocean's mysteries call to us so deeply, because on some level we recognize them. Every tide, every whisper, every strange sound from the abyss, they are reminders that we are not separate from the ocean. We are its children, its story continuing on the land. When we listen to those deep, mysterious frequencies, the bloop, the slow down, the upsweep, we are not just hearing geology or chants, breathing of a planet that once cradled us in water and may one day do so again. So, the next time you stand by the shore and the waves murmur against the sand, remember this: the ocean is speaking, always. Its language is pressure and sound. Its stories are written in the shifting of currents, the rise and fall of tides. And its whispers, those deep, haunting tones that echo through the dark, might just be memories of the worlds that came before us. The ocean doesn't keep secrets. It keeps songs, songs of time, of change, of return. And if you listen long enough, you might begin to hear them, faint, patient, eternal. The voices of the deep, the ghosts of forgotten shores, the whispers of civilizations the earth has not yet decided to remember. The ocean is no longer simply water, but a vast cathedral of silence, stretching endlessly in every direction. The pressure here is immense, yet it is not the force of water alone that weighs upon the mind. It is the presence of memory, as though the deep itself has collected fragments of a civilization long lost and refuses to release them. Every current carries whispers of lives that once moved here, of hands that carved stone into shapes of elegance and purpose, of eyes that gazed into the abyss with wonder and curiosity. The runes are both grand and subtle. Colossal columns rise from the seabed, their surfaces etched with spirals and geometric symbols. Time has softened their edges, but even in decay, the craftsmanship is undeniable. Patterns repeat across structures, sometimes forming labyrinths, sometimes suggesting constellations, sometimes appearing as musical notation frozen in stone. Between these columns, small creatures of impossible colors drift lazily, their movements illuminating fragments of the past for a brief, flickering moment before vanishing into shadow. Remnants of daily life, fragments of tools, pottery shards, and half-buried figurines hint at a people who cultivated beauty as instinctively as they engineered survival. Bones recovered from the depths reveal a species both familiar and strange, The skeletal structure is human, yet subtle variations speak of adaptation. Elongated limbs, reinforced rib cages, eyes structured to capture faint light in the blackest depths. It is as if evolution itself had bent to accommodate life in a world where air and water coexist, a civilization both above and beneath, straddling realms humans rarely inhabit. The artifacts are curious in their design. Bronze tools with corroded handles suggest metallurgy of a sophistication that challenges the assumed timeline of technological development. Containers once holding liquids, now filled with sand and silt, hint at the cultivation of resources, the storage of essentials. Occasionally, divers uncover spheres, their surfaces smooth and metallic, their interiors empty, yet resonating faintly with vibrations no instrument can fully measure. Some suggest these are remnants of energy systems, primitive in appearance but advanced in principle. Others fear they are not machines at all, but objects imbued with a purpose we cannot yet understand. Not. Faded pigments reveal scenes of figures engaged in ritual, work, and study. Humans, or beings like them, are depicted alongside creatures that defy categorization, moving in synchrony through water, as if all were part of a single, deliberate ecosystem. One image shows a gathering beneath a swirling vortex of light, figures with arms raised in reverence or command, smaller beings attending to tasks beyond comprehension. Stars are etched above them, suggesting that they not only observed the heavens, but mapped them with precision, finding order in the chaos of night. Despite the silence of the deep, there is a rhythm that persists. Strange vibrations, imperceptible yet constant, move through the rocks as though the ocean itself carries a heartbeat. When amplified, these hums form patterns that some interpret as messages, others as music. They rise and fall, repeating and overlapping, creating a tapestry of sound that is simultaneously alien and familiar. Researchers speculate endlessly. Could these be echoes of the civilization's communication, preserved in the very bones of the planet? Could the water itself remember, retaining the sound of voices no human has heard in millennia? Perilous. The trenches twist and fall beyond the reach of conventional lighting. Submersibles navigate narrow passageways, revealing chambers where ceilings are supported by intricately carved arches, walls lined with reliefs that twist into forms that defy conventional logic. Occasionally, explorers glimpse shapes at the edge of perception, shadows that shift against the current, always retreating before they can be studied. Some claim to have seen figures moving with deliberate purpose, not the random drift of marine life, but movements that suggest thought intention, and awareness. There are those who believe this civilization did not vanish entirely, that somewhere in the abyss, descendants of these people still thrive. Genetic evidence hints at adaptations to extreme pressure, prolonged submersion, and near total darkness. They may have evolved beyond recognition, their existence hidden in realms humans have only begun to touch. If so, the echoes in the water are not merely memories, they are signals, a record of a society that learned to exist in harmony with the world most cannot survive. Anchored by carved stone planters and tended with care. Seaweed and coral were arranged in precise patterns, forming corridors of color and light. Creatures swam and choreographed formations, some appearing to be companions, others possibly guardians. The ecosystem was cultivated, deliberate, a reflection of a people who understood the delicate balance of life. Even in ruin, hints of these gardens survive. Tendrils of bioluminescent algae trace the edges of broken planters, casting ghostly patterns across the sand, a faint echo of the order that once existed here. The reasons for the civilization's disappearance remain elusive. Catastrophic natural events likely played a role. Earthquakes that fractured the seabed, tsunamis that swallowed cities before they could be rebuilt. Rising temperatures may have altered delicate ecosystems, forcing adaptation or extinction. Disease could have swept through communities, leaving survivors too few to maintain the infrastructure that sustained them. Some whisper of darker forces, unknown phenomena in the deep that humans are neither equipped nor ready to understand. Perhaps the ocean itself is an agent of erasure, reshaping and reclaiming what had once dared to inhabit it. Knowledge, both scientific and spiritual. Symbols etched into stone repeat across chambers, suggesting written language, star maps, or musical notation. The repetition is precise, almost obsessive, as if designed to endure millennia. Some researchers interpret these patterns as warnings, instructions, or records. Others believe they are art, created for beauty or devotion, the meaning forever lost to time. The truth may lie somewhere between, in a realm humans struggled to imagine. Divers and researchers report experiences bordering on the mystical. Chambers with water warmer than surrounding depths, objects that emit faint energy pulses, visions of figures moving through spaces long abandoned. Laughter, whispers, and gestures seem to echo across centuries, perceived not through ears, but through the mind itself. Some dismiss these encounters as hallucinations induced by isolation, darkness, and pressure. Yet the consistency and detail of these reports suggests something more, something that defies rational explanation. Only in artifacts, but in structure. Caverns form natural amphitheaters, their acoustics amplifying even the slightest motion. Arches, tunnels, and plazas suggest intentional urban planning, designed to accommodate both movement and ceremony. Certain chambers align with celestial events, sunlight penetrating through cracks during solstices, illuminating murals in patterns that may have been more than coincidence. These alignments hint at knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and ritual intertwined, a culture that observed both the heavens and the depths with equal reverence. Bones and tools found together imply a degree of social organization. Individuals appear to have specialized roles: builders, engineers, caretakers, perhaps scholars or priests. The artifacts show evidence of technological ingenuity: filtration systems to keep water clear, air pockets maintained for breathable space, structures designed to withstand immense pressure. There is a sense of intelligence and foresight, an understanding of forces far beyond simple survival instincts. Is that this civilization transcended human limitations entirely, adapted to underwater life. They may have achieved forms of perception, communication, and existence incomprehensible to surface dwellers. The shapes glimpsed at the edge of vision may be these descendants, thriving where humans could not. If so, then the ruins are not tombs, but thresholds, gateways into a world that continues to evolve silently, patiently, beyond our perception. The ocean carries these stories not as history, but as memory. Each current, each vibration, each flicker of bioluminescence is a fragment of a civilization preserved in its depths. The sunken reaches are more than ruins. They are a testament to adaptability, to imagination, to the resilience of life under extraordinary conditions. They remind us that the surface world, with all its cities and empires, may be but a fleeting moment in a history written on scales we are only beginning to perceive. The mysteries remain: the purpose of certain objects, the full meaning of murals and symbols, the potential existence of living descendants, all elude definitive explanation. In the silence of the deep, there is a sense that understanding is possible, but only for those willing to venture far beyond what they know, beyond light, beyond comfort, beyond the bounds of human expectation. Somewhere in the darkness, currents whisper secrets in pulses of sound and motion. Some ruins appear to shift subtly, as though alive in ways we cannot yet grasp. And beneath all of it, the faint glimmer of civilization persists, not in stone, not in bone, but in the ocean's memory, in the rhythm of the water itself, carrying the echoes of a people who refused to be forgotten. Is not merely a chapter in history. It is a mirror reflecting what humans might become if they dare to adapt, to explore, to coexist with forces older and stranger than themselves. And as long as the ocean remembers, as long as currents continue to hum with echoes of the past, there is hope that some part of that civilization endures, waiting for discovery, recognition, or perhaps reunion with the world it once observed from beneath the waves. It is not a gradual decline along familiar continental slopes, but a sudden, unrelenting descent into shadow so dense that even the most powerful instruments struggle to register depth. Pressure mounts with every meter, squeezing both metal and mind. Yet there is more here than physical intensity. There is the weight of history, the inertia of memory that has collected in the deep like sediment layered over millennia. Somewhere at the bottom of this yawning trench lie the abyssal vaults, ancient chambers older than recorded history, older than the human imagination itself. The first discovery was by accident. A remotely operated vehicle designed for deep oceanic surveys was mapping the trench for tectonic shifts when its sonar detected something anomalous, a perfectly straight corridor carved into the rock face. It could not have been natural. Erosion forms curves, fractures, jagged edges, but this was a line of impossible precision, smooth and symmetrical, cutting across the trench wall, as if drawn with a ruler. The corridor opens into a massive circular chamber, walls curving upward, disappearing into darkness. Black stone rises and spires from the floor, towering like the organ pipes of some cathedral, each one etched with fractal patterns, spirals within spirals, designs that seem both geometric and organic. Suspended in the water between the spires float spheres of faint light, pulsating with slow, rhythmic energy. These orbs defy classification, not solid, not fluid, yet stable, shimmering like captured starlight. When approached, they shift color in response, flickering in patterns that feel almost sentient, almost communicative. As explorers move through the chamber, the walls themselves respond. Every sound, every vibration echoes not as a simple reflection, but as a melody, rising and falling in harmonic sequences. A knock against the stone triggers a resonance that spreads across the vault, shifting subtly as if acknowledging the presence of observers. The patterns of sound are unmistakable, forming repeating structures that suggest purpose and intention. These vaults are not mere shelters. They are living archives, repositories of memory encoded into the very fabric of the ocean floor. Scans reveal cavities within the stone filled with tissue-like material. Channels run through the spires like neural networks, branching, interweaving, a complexity that mimics the human brain. Architecture here and biology are indistinguishable. One wonders whether the structures were built or grown, whether they were inhabited or designed as extensions of consciousness. The vaults challenge every notion of what is natural, what is artificial, and what it means to preserve knowledge beyond the limits of mortality. Speculation about their purpose is endless. Some believe the vaults were libraries, not of books, but of sensation and experience, preserving the collective memory of a civilization adapted to life beneath the waves. Others suggest that they were sanctuaries, designed to outlast cataclysms on the surface, places where life and thought could endure beyond the reach of destruction. A few even proposed that the vaults were prisons, containing forces too vast or dangerous to be left in the open, sealed away in the crushing embrace of the ocean. Explained. Time seems distorted here. Minutes feel like hours, and hours pass without acknowledgement. The mind struggles to process the depth, the scale, the perfect symmetry of chambers stretching beyond sight. Some describe visions of figures moving gracefully among the spires, their forms humanoid but elongated, their limbs fluid and webbed, adapting seamlessly to a world of water and pressure. These apparitions are rarely seen directly, glimpsed in peripheral vision or detected through subtle motion in the orb-lit spaces. They vanish when attention is focused, leaving only the faint echo of movement, like memory brushing against the present. One of the most remarkable discoveries involves the vault's connection to sound and vibration. Hydrophones placed at different points detect low-frequency pulses that travel vast distances through water, linking multiple vaults across the globe. The patterns repeat, almost like a language, and when recorded over weeks, months, even years, they reveal coherence, regularity, a network spanning oceans and centuries. The realization is staggering. These vaults are not isolated. They are nodes in a planetary system of resonance, capable of transmitting information through the water itself. With them, one crew member, acting on impulse, hummed a simple note in the darkness of a central chamber. The vault responded. Its spires emitted a note an octave higher, followed by two descending pulses in perfect rhythm. For hours, the crew observed a call and response pattern forming, subtle but undeniable. When recorded and analyzed, these vibrations echoed not only within the trench, but along distant parts of the ocean floor, resonating across thousands of kilometers. It is impossible to tell whether the vault was reacting to sound or consciousness, to presence or intent, or whether this response had existed long before humans arrived to hear it. The abyssal vaults suggest a civilization capable of merging life, memory, and environment in ways modern science struggles to comprehend. Bones recovered from upper chambers indicate humans, but altered, adapted for extreme pressure, for movement through water as natural as walking on land. Eyes are larger, rib cages reinforced, lens elongated for efficiency in a gravity-dense medium. The tools and artifacts suggest metallurgy, engineering, and ritualistic design, but they are only fragments, hints at a culture sophisticated beyond what surface archaeology can imagine. Behind the walls, depicting life under the ocean. Figures interact with creatures unfamiliar to modern taxonomy, swimming in choreographed patterns, holding instruments or devices whose purpose is unknown. Central to one mural is a massive figure, humanoid but distinctly other, raising a hand toward a vortex of light. Smaller figures bow or gesture in deference. Surrounding them, stars are etched in spirals, constellations aligned with events or ceremonies now indecipherable. The imagery is not random. It is deliberate, a record of history, astronomy, and ritual encoded in stone. Yet, interpretation is elusive. Are these allegories, records, instructions, or warnings? Reports from divers deepen the mystery. Some describe chambers filled with water warmer than surrounding depths, objects that emit faint electromagnetic pulses, visions of human-like figures performing tasks impossible in our reality. Laughter, whispers, movements seem to emanate from the very water itself, perceived not through ears or sight, but directly into consciousness. Skeptics dismiss these claims as hallucinations caused by isolation, pressure, and the monotony of blackened water. Yet, the consistency of the accounts suggests another explanation. These vaults interact with mind as much as they interact with matter. Civilization transcended the physical. Adapted to the ocean, they may have found a way to exist as consciousness within water. Diffused, networked, eternal. The vaults, in this theory, are not tombs, but interfaces, designed to connect human thought to oceanic memory. Each spire, each chamber, each orb may act as a node in a system that preserves experience, feeling, and knowledge beyond the limits of flesh. The implications for human history are staggering. If these vaults are proof, then the first sentient life capable of culture may not have walked the land, but swam in the ocean. Surface civilizations, Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Maya, could be continuations of a lineage whose roots reach into depths we are only beginning to explore. The ocean, in this perspective, is not merely a habitat, but a repository, a living archive, and a teacher. Speak differently. Their cadence slows, their gestures deliberate. They describe dreams of submerged cities glowing faintly from within, of melodies and sequences that seem encoded in the water itself. Some awakened with skin dampened by salts, though they were never at the surface. Instruments record faint vibrations for days afterward, signals that can only be explained as persistent echoes of interaction between human presence and the vault's latent energy. The Abyssal Vaults challenge every assumption about civilization, memory, and consciousness. Their existence implies that adaptation can lead not only to survival, but to transformation. Humankind, in its arrogance, considers itself the apex of intelligence and culture. Yet here lies evidence of a species that mastered the environment, achieved symbiosis with the ocean, and encoded its memory into the planet itself. And though the vaults are hidden beneath unimaginable pressure and darkness, they are not silent. The planet sings in harmonic pulses, subtle, persistent, waiting for understanding. Trench. Explorers discovered a monolith at the center of a dome, etched with spirals upon spirals. The monolith hummed with a frequency matching human brain waves during dreaming. When a hand touched it, the vibration ceased, replaced by an impression of thought that filled the mind without words. We are not gone. We are the tide. We are the memory that binds the world. No recording captured the voice. No instrument quantified it. Yet hydrophones placed along coasts and deep-sea trenches detected a pulse that persisted for hours, resonating across thousands of kilometers. The ocean, alive with memory, had spoken. Perhaps it was a coincidence, the shifting of tectonic plates or ocean currents. Perhaps it was something else, the awakening of a consciousness older than humanity, diffused across the water, waiting, observing, remembering. Silently humming beneath the weight of millennia. They preserve a civilization that refused the finality of death. A civilization that chose to merge with the ocean and with memory itself. And every tide, every swell, every whispering current carries traces of that choice, faint and eternal. The ocean forgets nothing. Every pulse, every rhythm, every shimmer of light is a fragment of thought, a trace of life, a testament to the potential of existence beyond what the surface perceives. Humanity may one day learn to understand this language, to interpret the vault's resonance, to read the ocean as a living text. Until then, they remain a mystery, a caution, and a promise that life in its vastness is far stranger than our minds can grasp, and that memory itself may transcend flesh, preserved in the eternal depths of the sea. The ocean waits. The vaults wait. And those who venture too close may discover not just history, but the reflection of what humanity might become if it dares to listen and descend. Where even sound seemed to dissolve into pressure, the ocean began to hum. Not a voice, not a song, something older, something waiting. The divers felt it before their instruments did, a vibration through their bones, through the water, through the very thought of being alive. And then, through the haze of black and silver currents, they saw it, a shape, vast enough to eclipse the seafloor itself, pulsing faintly with light. A door. No, not a door. A heart. It beat once, slowly, sending ripples of pale blue energy spiraling outward like a living tide. Every organism in the water seemed to pause. Even the currents, constant since time immemorial, bent themselves toward it. And as the divers floated there, trembling, one of them whispered what no one else dared to say aloud. It's not just reacting to us, it's aware. The glow intensified, soft, rhythmic, deliberate, as if the vault were listening, deciding, remembering. And then, silence. Only a lingering resonance remained echoing across the instruments, through the holes of ships, through the dreams of those asleep on the surface. For the first time, humanity had reached a place that did not merely exist. It waited. The ocean had turned its gaze back upon us, and this was only the beginning. But what lies beyond that ancient pulse, beneath the veil of the Abyssal Vault? In the next chapter of Ocean Civilization, the truth will surface, and it may not be ready to be understood. There's more to this story than meets the eye, so let's put a pin to this tale for a moment and think on it for a while. In the meantime, rest well, my friend.